Smart Objects Mockup Part 2. Hi guys, we continue to study smart objects, and today we'll talk about their features and what else they can be useful for. Let's say we need to make an advertising layout of cosmetic products, and we have already placed all the elements we need in a file as a smart object, and now we need to make some changes in each of these objects. But the fact is that there are some limitations. When we work with a smart object, we can, for example, easily create a selected area and work with it. For example, I have now created a selected area on a smart layer and applied to it, for example, a hue and saturation. So, I change the saturation. Well, I will not perform this action. I will cancel it. Well, we can't use retouching tools, for example, or we won't be able to use drawing tools on the smart layer. And in order to use them, you need to either rasterize the layer, which doesn't always suit us, or do the following. We double-click on the smart object icon and our layer opens in a separate window. And for example, I would like to change the color of the lip. So I will take a color replacement tool for use purpose. So let's pick up some other color. So that is different from the color that we have, something like this. And so I point on the lips and the color changes. I hope you still remember how this tool works. So well, let's say my color is replaced. If I go to our main window now, you'll see that nothing has changed. But if I go to the window where I have only this layer open and press the keyboard shortcut Ctrl+S, that is, it will simply save it. Then the changes will also reflect it in my file. Thus, if we need to make some changes on the smart layer, we click on the layer icon to do it in a separate window and save it. Now let's talk about this. Suppose we have some art object, we applied some filters, transformation, something else to it too. But then we need to insert another object instead of this object. Some similar object, perhaps, but different. To do this, we right-click and select Replace Content. And for example, instead of those shadows that I had, I will choose green shadows and click here. And those shadows that I had were replaced with new ones. At the same time, the size of the new object completely adjusted to the size of the object and its characteristics that we already had. By the way, you can apply adjustment layers to smart objects. For example, let's apply a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and so that it is not applied to the whole image as a whole, but only to the case with green shadows. Let's click this icon. Now we will have all these changes only on the layer with the smart object on which the green shadows are located, and we can change, for example, its color. Well, for example, let's make it like this. Well, let's assume that this is the color we want. Although it would be possible, of course, to somehow pick it up so that it's more harmonious with everything else. Well, suppose we leave such a color, so adjustment layers can be applied, since they don't directly involve the contents of what we have inside the container on the layer. Another interesting detail is copying. For example, we need to have 4 pieces, not 3. Take for example layer and copy, Ctrl+J in the usual way. And now the most interesting thing. The fact is that when we copy our layers in this way, the layer that is a copy completely clones the properties of the layer from which it was copied. Let's see how it works. Well, actually, let's divide them like this. Here at the bottom we have a copy layer, and at the top is the layer that we originally had. Select the layer that was originally and double-click on this icon. Well, for example, we will take here, and using the brush tool, let's say we draw something like this in the overlay mode. Well, such things. It happens sometimes. Click Ctrl+C. We go here and see that the changes have occurred not only on the layer we worked with, but also on its copy. And sometimes it is useful when, for example, you have 10 objects that are the same, and you need to make some identical changes to all of them. Let's go back, let's delete our copy layer, and let's try to make a copy in a slightly different way. That is, before that we copied as always with the help of Ctrl+G. The same thing would happen if we just dragged on this icon. And now we will do this. Click the right mouse button and select New Smart, the copy. And we also have a copy. Let's move it too. Let's go to the previous layer, which we had as the main one, and make some changes here. Again, take a brush and, for example, paint 1/2, like that. So we save with Ctrl+S. Switch to our main layer And we see that our changes affected only the layer on which we worked. These are the features. And in order for your memory to better preserve all the information received, let's summarize a little. First, you can apply selection tools to a smart object, and you can apply adjustment layers. But in order to use, for example, drawing and retouching tools, such as liquify, brush, dodge, burn, stamp, and so on, you need to double-click on the Smart Layer icon. A separate window will open, in which you will make all the necessary changes. Okay, secondly, you can create copies of your smart objects. If you do it in the usual way, then the copy becomes a clone, and all the changes that you make to the source file will be reflected in the copy of layer. But if you don't want this to happen, then you right-click and select New Smart via Copy. That's it. You can also replace the contents of a smart object by right-clicking and selecting Replace Content. A file explorer will open, and you'll select the desired file. This option is especially interesting. It is used to create mockups, which we'll talk about now. So, what is a mockup? Mockup is a kind of template that you can use repeatedly and edit various images to it. At the same time, it will just adjust to the parameters you set. For example, in our case, we have a billboard. And let's say you are a designer, and you need to replace the contents of this billboard. But look, firstly, we have a transform here, and secondly, we may have some filters applied here. There is some text here that is also somehow transformed, and that's quite a lot of action. But you only need to change the image of a girl, for example. Please note that the layer on which the image of the girl is located is just a smart object, and you can just replace this girl with some other one. But in this case, it will not be enough to just click on the layer and choose to replace the content, because there is quite a lot of content here. The girl, the text, and the icon that you see below, and text are included here. Therefore, when we have a ready-made mockup, which by the way you can download from the internet, there are a lot of them. If you type download mockup for free, then you'll find all kinds of designer products, for any packaging, for t-shirts, for anything. So double-click on the layer icon. But we will not edit fonts. This is irrelevant to us now, and here we can just edit some other images and make some changes. And everything we do will be reflected in our original picture. Let's take this image and replace it with this one. I copied it, and now I'll just put it above the layer with the girl we had before. So the image we have is quite large. We'll place it there now, the way we like it more. Well, I'll do it like this. So click Enter. Next, look, we have an adjustment layer here. We can turn it off if we don't like the effect it creates, or reduce its opacity. All the words or the text are presented separately, and we can somehow move them. For example, we can take and hide the word design if we don't need it. And the other two words we can, for example, reduce. Well, for example, I will do this. Okay. Then we'll take this icon and move it, for example, here. That is, you see, we have made quite a lot of different changes. So, this can be aligned to the right. I hope you still remember how it is done. So, I have probably reduced the icon, and I will move it, like that. Well, here let's say it is done. We press Ctrl+C, and we move on to our poster. And look what we have got. Our picture fits perfectly into the parameters we set. In general, this is a very useful thing, especially for practicing designers. I hope that you have already realized how useful smart objects can be to us. And the homework today will be, firstly, to repeat the actions that we did with this image to fix the operations that I showed you. That is, to deal with copying layers, with tools which you can use on layers, with smart objects, with the way you can replace one object on the other, and also make your own billboard design for your street. That's it for today. It was Peter Romanov and AIM School. See you next time.